So the first commercial ad spot created with Sora has been released. Public opinion is pretty mixed, ranging from like, we hate AI video to like, Sora's okay when Paul Trello and the Shy Kids are making, artsy short films out of it, but, commercials? Naturally, I decided to put on my old detective's hat and do some sleuthing. So today we're gonna go through a full analysis of this spot. Plus I've got some information in the case file that no one else has talked about. I've also got a look at the latest Kling image to video feature. It looks really promising, and I've got a quality bump workflow for you to check out as well. Okay, lots to cover, let's dive in. First off, yes, we are back in Studio A. Let us never speak of Studio B again. So the first commercial ad spot for Sora has been released, and of all places, it comes from Toys R Us. And yes, Toys R Us does still exist as a company, although it is pretty much relegated to sort of being a pop-up store within Macy's department stores. So let's just dive in and take a look at the spot. Per usual, the original audio is muted.
Do you ever wonder how Toys R Us and Jeffrey, the giraffe, came to be? The son of a bike shop owner, Charles Lazarus had a vision that would go on to change toy stores forever. The greatest changed toy store there is. Toys R Us was the dream of Charles Lazarus. May all of your dreams come true, too.
So to be fair, while obviously this is a commercial spot, it's also, more or less a celebratory kind of like drink the Kool-Aid corporate celebration of the company's founder, Charles Lazarus. Is it just me, or does that name give off the vibe of being like a lore character in a survival horror game about being trapped in a toy store overnight? I mean, is it just me? The spot was produced by the creative house Native 4, and I actually spoke with them, and we'll dig into that in just a little bit. But first, let's go through an analysis of the ad. On initial watch, it was pretty apparent that there was a pretty good amount of post-VFX work done on this. For one, Jeffrey the Giraffe stays far too consistent to be Sora generated. He is 100% a 3D CGI character. As a side note, I personally did not grow up a Toys R Us kid, so I have no nostalgia for Jeffrey the Giraffe, other than the fact that, he has always been my argument that it is actually pronounced GIF, not GIF, because we do not say Jeffrey the Giraffe. We've definitely got some additional 3D elements here, like this Toys R Us logo is clearly comped in, that, it was not Sora generated. Actually, some interesting stuff on spelling coming up in just a second. And also, I'm pretty sure that a number of these toys are also 3D assets that were composited in. Also, is that the Reddit robot? It looks like the Reddit robot. Is that like a Sora Easter egg? A lot of the Sora footage of Toy Store seems to come off as kind of colorful, sort of blobby, incoherent stuff. You really notice it in this close-up of the toy shelf where, you've got these objects that are sort of toy-like. They don't really make sense in terms of an actual toy. It's kind of like the outline or the idea of a toy. Whereas, we have this kind of My Little Pony ripoff character up here that is clearly an asset that has been added in. Additionally, I do think that these two other robots back here are likely 3D assets, whereas this guy up here, I'm not sure. That guy actually might be Sora generated, considering he kind of looks like, a transformer that you bought off of Temu. We definitely have all of the typical character consistency problems going on with our young Charles. His hairstyle definitely changes throughout each shot, as well as his glasses. A lot of the particle sparkly stuff does feel very After Effects to me. I'm not sure if it was wholly generated in post or if it's augmenting some stuff that Sora had initially done, but I actually tend to lean towards it was probably put in post. I don't think that this was Sora generated. While we're here, I'm just gonna nitpick real quick. Not a huge fan of this shot. I don't know why the particles up there were just kind of smudged as opposed to just not just masking them out entirely. Again, clearly that is Jeffrey's hand, which is a 3D asset that is not Sora generated. And just one last nitpick, I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. We have this shot of like Charles floating to the sky, and then a few frames of this before it transitions into a burst, and then we get a weird dissolve that goes into the rest of our shot. It's just weird. So I don't know if this transition was generated by Sora or if these are two clips that are, you know, dissolved together. But yeah, it's just a weird cut. Additionally, I'm not entirely sure, but it does feel like the kid here is probably rotoscoped in. So I think he might be on a second or third layer. Nitpicking aside, and believe me, I don't want to armchair quarterback here because according to reports, the spot was done in just a few weeks. And that's literally from like concept to finish. And look, I know how it goes. Like there was probably a lot of sleepless nights. And you know, sometimes it's just got to get out the door. The one other thing that caught my eye was correct spelling. I was curious about that, so I reached out to Nick Cleveroff, the creative director at Native Foreign, to ask him, you know, was that Sora generated or was that something that they had to do in post? So yes, bicycle repair was definitely fixed in post. This is actually the original shot. So we have by Y Seal Repeich. And interestingly, I think that this guy might be an alternate version of Charles's father. Nick also did tell me that Best in Town here actually was Sora generated, except it said Best in Town. So there is an additional in here that has been painted out. In terms of the Sora slot machine, and you know, just to recap, it's been pretty widely reported both by Paul Trello and the Shy Kids that, you know, their shot ratios could range in the neighborhood of like 700 to 1. So I asked Nick about his experience, and he said, shot ratio wildly fluctuated. Some came extremely easier and quicker than 1 in 70, some a little longer. Then again, I'm very particular and wanted to be ultra specific with every shot. And remember, it's text to image, so in a sense, everything has to go right. Which also does bring up a good point. Yes, while Sora is capable of doing image to video, we actually have not seen any project featuring that as of yet. In fact, according to an unnamed source, and again, going back to my detective sleuth reporter, I do love saying I have an unnamed source. No one has access to Sora's image to video capabilities. It's just been completely brick-walled. Why? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, we can speculate that OpenAI considers it too, you know, like dangerous to let out. We can also speculate that it doesn't work. All we do know is the fact that no one is allowed to use it. So to answer the question that I constantly get in the comments of like, why keep talking about Sora? We're never going to get it. Well, I mean, like it or not, it has positioned itself as the model to beat. And with tools like Kling, Luma's Dream Factory, and Runway's Gen 3 now entering the 2.0 era of AI video creation, I think it's important to have, you know, that benchmark to aim for so that we know when we end up surpassing it, especially considering that, you know, those are tools that we have access to. So again, as always, just make stuff with the tools that you have. Yeah, there may be more roadblocks. It may require a little more improvisation and duct tape, but that's also a lot of the fun of it all. Speaking of fun, as just a quick roundup, Kling, the Chinese-based like Sora competitor that unfortunately is still China locked, although a few people are starting to get access to it and there are a few others that have found some workarounds. Well, they have released their image to video feature and it looks pretty good. So I still don't have access to Kling, but Blaine Brown does, and he was kind enough to take my profile picture and run it through the image to video model, and this is what we got. This is me passing the Will Smith test, but obviously not passing the table manners test. After that, I decided to follow that up by eating a giant hamburger. You know, it's my cheat day. And then followed by me putting on some lovely sunglasses. Again, most everyone viewing this video don't have access to Kling, so I did just decide to give it a shot by taking it over to Luma Labs Dream Factory and see the results. And well, I mean, I passed the table manners test in this one, but it does look like I'm kind of like unhinging my jaw like a snake in order to get that spaghetti down. I do eat like that. But maybe on a more useful note, Kelly V ended up generating a sort of a cinematic action sequence utilizing Kling's image to video. Yes, there is problems with the helicopters there. Utilizing Kling's image to video and extension features. And yes, while I will say that not every shot is perfect or workable, there's definitely a pretty good ratio of fairly workable footage in here. Like this GoPro shot is actually really cool. And I think that if you were to speed ramp some of this footage up, I mean, obviously there is sort of a little bit of that like molassesy AI video feel to it. Although, I mean, it's still moving fairly quick compared to the last generation of AI video models. So taking that footage and bringing it over to Kriya's new creative video enhance upscaler. That's a lot to say. We did cover this a few videos back, but this is actually now open and available to everyone. So you don't just have to have a pro account to use this. We end up with this. It just kind of cleans it up a little bit. I will say that the Kriya enhancer does tend to get a little heavy-handed at times, especially in those clouds back there. The AI strength slider is very finicky. You're probably going to want to run that a little bit on the low side. For example, in this version where I have it up a little bit higher, you can actually just see, yeah, it gets, the footage tends to get a little bit blurrier. You know, it gets like really kind of intense on the skies and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, salt and pepper to your tastes, an experiment, definitely, but I would definitely consider starting at lower AI strengths and higher resemblance strengths. Now taking that lower AI slider setting and bringing it over to Topaz and running that just to kind of clean up the footage a little bit. As an FYI, I'm just running this in full HD. I did not do a 4K upscale to it. Again, as I went over in our last video, I think that the best settings when it comes to AI video is definitely the iris model. So that's the face low quality, motion quality, the input condition being low quality. And then, you know, pretty much just running it as is. I did crank up the recover detail. It defaults at 20. I threw it up to 43 just because, yeah, why not? And then ran that. And then ultimately, just by throwing a little bit of color correction on this and then really cranking up the sharpen, we end up with this, which, you know, I think this looks really pretty good. And obviously you don't have to do this in Premiere. You could do this in any, you know, you could do this in DaVinci, you could do it in CapCut. It really just comes down to cranking the sharpen, which I have to set to like 74 here, and then just kind of playing around with color correction until you find something that you like. So again, a workflow that I think you should definitely try out. Link to Kriya is down below. There's also a link for Topaz, which I know is like super expensive. It is an affiliate site, so if you do happen to, you know, buy a copy through there, it does help the channel out, so, you know, much appreciated. And finally, sort of funny enough, as I was wrapping this video up, Kling actually reached out with kind of a cheat sheet to be able to get access to it without, you know, needing a Chinese cell phone number. Because I literally just got it, I haven't had time to, you know, dig through the documentation and test it out. So I'm not going to put it into this video, but definitely do make sure that you are subscribed, and I'll either make another video about it or I'll pop it into the community feed. So yeah, one way or another, hopefully Kling Access will be coming for all of us soon. In the meantime, I thank you for watching. My name is Tim.